From the Oklahoman newsroom, it's time for Thunder Thursday, our weekly extended look at Thunder basketball, and we are brought to you by Charleston's in Bricktown. Be sure to head over there for pre- and post-game. Thunder in town, not for a while though, so maybe people can go watch the game over there while they're away, because in Miami on Friday night, in Boston on Sunday. Guys, before we get to some of that talk, let's talk about what we saw in that Orlando game the other night, because it was a bit of a different group. You had Steven Adams and Terrance Ferguson sit with injuries that were kind of last minute. We didn't know until almost game time that they were going to be out. But Nerlens and Hamidou Diallo resurfaces in the starting lineup after not playing for 3 games. Maddie, how'd you feel like those two guys played in the absence of Adams and Ferguson?
I thought Nerlens did really well. And he showed us this season that he can be an extremely good rim protector. And honestly, his absence on the floor when he had that concussion was a really big hit for the Thunder earlier this month. And so he stepped in really well, really admirably. Obviously, then that means that with the second unit, you run into some depth issues and have to work with, at least they have Patrick Patterson and Jeremy Grant are both guys who can play some small ball center. You don't have a true center in there with the second unit anymore, but Nerlens Noel has been really good and has seemed to really come back from that concussion strong. Hamidou Diallo is a guy who we haven't even seen in the rotation for the past few games. The last time before the other night we had seen him was in New York, and he didn't even play very much. So for him to step in with the starting unit and be able to absorb those minutes was good. He didn't do anything spectacular, but that was almost a good thing for him, that he wasn't pressing, wasn't trying to do too much with that opportunity.
We always say that nobody is really ever out of the rotation with Billy Donovan, Barry, but yet I got to tell you, I was a little surprised to see Hamidou Diallo be the guy that got picked to fill in for Terrance Ferguson.
Well, you know, the guy that Billy would have wanted to put in there, of course, was Alex Sabonis, and he was not available. He was not available for about another 45 minutes because he came in late second quarter. But Billy didn't want to mess up the rotations. If you start Schroder, which that's an effective lineup, Schroder with the starting lineup, but then the rotations are all messed up and it becomes a mess. You don't want to put Abdel Nader out there against starting caliber wing players. So he's a little bit hampered on what he could do. Diallo's not a lost cause, and you mentioned it. People go in and out of the doghouse of Billy Donovan. You'll go 3 weeks without playing, then back you are. So I thought it was a good sign. Diallo played okay. He didn't get too lost on defense. He had 7 points and he missed 1 or 2 shots. So he played okay. And, I thought it was a very good win considering the circumstances of missing 2 starters.
Yeah, and, Barry mentions Alex Sabonis, Maddie, and, we had seen him maybe in street clothes, maybe in uniform a little bit, but kind of a guy that, we weren't real sure when he might reappear in a game. Well, it was Tuesday night in Orlando. Was that a surprise at all to you?
They've been slowly working on bringing him back. So I believe it was 17 games, starting with illness he was a late scratch on Christmas Day, and then haven't seen him since, and that illness then became personal issues, and he's been out for a long time. So they have brought him back as an active player, but not in the rotation for the past few games. So it was a slow progression. We didn't know exactly when he would make that next step from being active and on the bench and just there to be in uniform and be with his teammates to actually getting on the court. And Billy Donovan said, he had a good workout with the team right before the game. They talked about it, thought it would be a good time for him to get a few minutes. So it'll still be a process for him to get back into shape after such a long time off. But he's taken that next step in the process.
Yeah, at least he's back on the court. And Barry, this has all been sort of mysterious, frankly. I mean, as Maddie mentioned, 17 games that Alex Sabonis has been either totally gone or there, and we don't quite know his status. And would he play? Would he not play? But it's going to take some time to get back, regardless. How much do you feel like he can help these guys? I mean, maybe not Friday night against the Heat, or maybe not Sunday in Boston. But how much could he ultimately help this team?
Well, I think he'd help a bunch. He actually helped them a little in Orlando. I mean, he was 1 of 2 from the 3-point range. He missed one in the corner, but Russ came right back to him, got him a shot at the top of the key, and he nailed it. We sit here and talk about, does the Thunder need to add some pieces? And most people say, yeah, you can always improve. And wing shooting is sort of the number one thing you think of. And all of a sudden, here's Alex Abrinas back, and you say, oh, yeah, he's on the team. It's almost like a midseason acquisition. So if he can come back and play to his sort of normal standard, then that's a player that can really help you.
Yeah, kind of like you say, an unexpected addition. Yeah, when Terrance Ferguson goes down and Abrinas is not, we don't know. Suddenly, who starts at that 2 becomes a little bit of a question mark, Maddie. You don't realize that they've got those guys, but they've been hurt, they've been unavailable. That depth has definitely been pretty thin.
It definitely has been.
Yeah.
But if Alex can get back to where he's getting more minutes, I mean, Barry said he can stretch the floor, and his defense has gotten so much better recently than it has been in past seasons. And so when you have a guy like Hamidou Diallo who has had some issues on the defensive front, to be able to go to Alex Abrinas after, if Abdul Nader's made a case to keep himself in the rotation, but his defense has also been spotty at times. So to have Alex Abrinas be one of your best defensive options maybe isn't where you want to be, but he has stepped up. He could be another option once he gets his win back.
Here's what I love about the whole narrative of Tuesday night. We get word before tip-off. No Steven Adams, no Terrance Ferguson, and all of Thunder Nation collectively goes, how are we ever going to play without Terrance Ferguson? You think, well, Nerlens is here, we'll be all right at center. But how are we going to replace Ferguson, the guy that people wanted traded in November, wanted demoted to the G League in October? Now you can't play without him.
Well, and I thought, Barry, too, I mean, you've written about this, the way that the Thunder has these swings of playing great and playing terrible. With all of those factors, I thought that Orlando game was the recipe was set up for a loss, no doubt about it.
No, it was a very good win, considering you're missing those 2. They've been playing down to the competition in the last few weeks anyway. It was primed for a Thunder loss, and when they got down the way they did, especially, they had the big lead, 15-point lead in the third quarter, and then get down, you thought, well, here they go. But they were saved by a man who's barely been mentioned in this show so far, and I think he really deserves his due, and that's Dennis Schroder. Just saved him.
Yeah.
I mean, look at what Dennis Schroder did. Paul George had a first quarter for the ages. Then Paul George had a second quarter for the ages. Has 31 points at halftime. Paul George did not have the best period individually in that game. Dennis Schroder comes out, 7 of 8 shooting, 18 points in the first 7 minutes of the fourth quarter, hands the game back to the Thunder. So Schroder really, and that's what a team is supposed to do. When guys are hurt, when guys are out, when things go wrong, different people step up. Schroder stepped up in a big way.
Well, and Maddie, before we get to sort of the upper crust guys we're going to talk about here in a second, don't steal my thunder, by the way, on Paul George, Barry. Come on.
Don't steal my thunder, yeah.
Don't steal my thunder on Thunder Thursday. But Schroder, as the whole basketball world is talking about Anthony Davis, there's another Anthony out there, as our video guru Dave Morris mentioned to us. Carmelo Anthony is out there. It reminds me that the Thunder turned Carmelo Anthony into Dennis Schroder, and what a win that has been for this team.
It really has been. No, he has been, even, we've seen him go through slumps. It's not even like he's been perfect throughout the season, but he just elevates that second unit. And now that he's gotten his shot back, he's been really good, especially in second halves. And so for the Thunder to have another guy that they can go to consistently down the stretch, that's huge. And it means that not all of the pressure is on Paul George.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, unbelievable stuff. All right, let's talk about sort of the uber talent on this team, the All-Stars. We already know Paul George is going, as we sit here on Thursday morning. All-Star reserves will be announced later on today, on Thursday evening. We expect Russell Westbrook to be one. Steven Adams, maybe. Barry, what's your best guess? Let's talk Steven Adams first. Is he going to be an All-Star reserve?
No, I don't think there's any chance. There's no chance. If the Thunder was leading the West, had the best record in the NBA, maybe you'd think about adding Steven Adams. But I don't think there's any way. Too crowded in the West. In the East, sure. Hey, send out invitations.
Everybody gets on the All-Star
team. Anybody that can have positive PERs on their All-Star team. In the West, no. Too many big-time players. Just centers in the Northwest Division.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Nurkic, you got Jokic, you got Towns, you got Gobert, you got Adams. I mean, there's 5 really good players right there. So I don't think there's any way for Adams, but that's all right. He's on the side of our building. He's in our hearts. He's an all-star to us.
Well, and he
wants a break.
Yeah. And honestly, with as many twisted ankles and things that he's played through, Maddie, I mean, there probably is a point in his career where he's going to deserve that All-Star nod. And frankly, he's had a fantastic season, but not playing, not being in game situations, that's not going to be the worst thing for Steven Adams if he doesn't make the All-Star game.
No, and he's a guy who he plays through pain all the time. I mean, this ankle now is, I believe, the second this month that he's twisted and come back and played through the game. Smart for the Thunder to have him sit out against Orlando. Gives him 3 days of rest in a row, or plus the day before. So good long time for him to rest up, get back, not aggravate that more. But yeah, his ankles are really taking a beating.
They really are. So likely that Steven Adams, just because of the depth of great talent of big men in the West, probably not going to be a reserve. But Russell Westbrook, still doing Russell Westbrook things, still triple doubles all over the place. And Maddie, he's had his shooting struggles. There's no doubt about it. His consistency continues to lack in the shooting, and yet he had one of his best games against Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the pattern between them having good games and then falling off, especially playing down to competition. But Russ has his own pattern where if he has a pretty awful shooting night like he did against the Bucks where he was 5 of 20, you can almost bet on the fact that he's going to come back and shoot really well. He's done it before. So this was the most efficient he shot this month. The last time he did it was back in December, late December, and the night before he had shot 6 of 20. So it's one of those things where he seems to bounce back really well from some pretty awful shooting slumps out there.
Yeah, not great nights. And Barry, I mean, the fact that he's, there's no doubt that the shooting has got to get better for this team to be sort of an upper echelon contender. You can't have Russell Westbrook not being efficient or not being so inefficient, but yet, as he's continued to really be the motor with this team, what has impressed you most as you think about the fact that he's likely to get that All-Star nod again on Thursday night?
Well, 2 things. One is I think Westbrook really is trying to morph into a non-volume shooter. He doesn't shoot as much as he used to. I think he took 12 shots in Orlando. I think he was perfectly fine with that. This is a guy that shoots upward of 30 shots for a good chunk of his career. What did he have in Game 6 in Salt Lake City? Was it
like
40 something?
Yeah,
he takes 40-something shots in a playoff elimination game last April. This is a guy, it's just second nature. Jack up a lot of shots.
Yeah.
He's fighting against that, and he's doing a pretty good job of limiting his shots. That impresses me. The other thing that impresses me is just how he goes about this incredible production, and the world, including us and everybody else, really doesn't pay attention anymore.
The triple doubles?
Yeah. I mean, I saw Scott Van Pelt on ESPN a week or so ago was doing something on the Thunder, and then they flashed Westbrook, and they flashed his statistics, and Scott Van Pelt said, oh, yeah, there's Russell. He's got a triple-double. Doesn't seem like it's a big deal anymore. Probably ought to be, but it's not. And, on the radio, one of my cohorts last night was talking about Westbrook's game in Orlando. Said, he played a really good, solid game. I said, he had 23 points, he had 14 rebounds, he had 14 assists, and he shot over 50% from the field. And we've reduced that to a good, solid game. He set the bar so high for what he achieves that we take it for granted, and we probably shouldn't, because it's not going to be there forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I guess the question becomes, if he gets that All-Star nod as we expect, who are his teammates going to be when these captains select the team? There's talk of him and Joel Embiid ending up on the same team.
God.
Sign us up for that, right? Who wouldn't want that, yeah?
That would be amazing and cringeworthy all at the same time.
I'm not sure.
Well, Giannis says he's going to do it. He says, I'm a man, what did he say? I'm a man of peace.
peace.
He's a man of peace.
I like him.
Does he understand Russell Westbrook's approach to all this?
Giannis, you're from Greece. You're not from Switzerland. Quit trying to get the world together.
I'm not sure it'll work anyway, but however it happens, Russell Westbrook is going to be on a team with somebody he does not like. Let's be honest. Even if they just did a whole West team, he's not going to like everybody on that team. But somebody that we know already in the All-Star game, Paul George, you guys were there in person at that Milwaukee game on Sunday. None of us had the good fortune of being in Orlando for that first half, as Barry talked about. But you know, the fact that he did what he did on the same court as Giannis on Sunday, and then to come back with that first half, just a stat-stuffing first half, Maddie. I know we've talked that he's facing an uphill climb on this MVP thing, but aren't those the type of things you have to have if you're going to even really be in the conversation?
Oh, they definitely are. Probably needs more than that, but like you said, to go up against a top MVP candidate and be the better player on the court that night, that's huge. And you know, the Thunder did a really good job shutting Giannis down defensively. But you know, Paul George is doing it on both ends. He has that dunk, which is over Giannis, which is gonna, you know, play over SportsCenter a million times and on everyone's highlight reel, to show these two MVP candidates going up against each other, and Paul George doing what Giannis does best, actually. Yeah. So he does need nights like that, and 31 points in a half is absolutely ridiculous. And it comes on a night when he actually had 2 fouls within the first minute and 25 seconds, and then is like, nope, I'm going to stay in, and doesn't foul for the rest of the half. And so to have that discipline and turn it on, have that type of first half when the Thunder is so shorthanded, huge.
Well, and what a difference that decision makes for Billy Donovan to trust, and for Paul George to say, no, I'm good. I mean, they got down 12-2 early, Barry. If he's not in there could be danger. Robinson.
Orlando scored almost every possession. Thunder didn't score on almost every possession. I don't know how it could have been worse.
Well, it's true.
But that is a key. That was a key part of the game, because, you know, what's happened with the Thunder is it's sort of more. Remember the old days post Durant, but pre-George. We're talking about 16, 17, that 1 year. When Russell Westbrook went to the bench, just the haunting feeling you got in your soul. This isn't going to be good. That's sort of the way it is with Paul George. The Thunder can play without Steven Adams now. They don't want to, but they can. They can play without Russell Westbrook. Dennis Schroder allows them that luxury. The Thunder doesn't really want to go very long without Paul George on the court. Mm-hmm. Everything just goes way more smoothly when Paul George is out there, because of his defense, because of his playmaking, because of his shooting. So, yeah, the big decision by Billy Donovan. I actually didn't agree with it, because I think a guy that gets two fouls in the first 90 seconds is going to play tentative defensively for the next 10, 12 minutes if he finishes the quarter. What's the use of Paul George being out there not playing big-time defense? You might as well let him rest. But it panned out and led the Thunder to victory.
Before we talk and get out of here, looking at the next few games for the Thunder, for Paul George, guys, I asked earlier what has impressed Barry most about Russell Westbrook, even as he's struggled to shoot. Is there anything about this guy, Paul George, that surprises you guys, or that you've been surprised as he's done what he's doing? Maddie, you've been there for a lot of these games. Anything surprised you about this?
Honestly, his flexibility with the rotations has surprised me, because we came into this season knowing Paul George is a guy who plays the first quarter. That's how he gets into his rhythm. That's what he does. That's not true anymore. He goes out partway through the first quarter so that he can come back in and stagger his minutes with Russell Westbrook. And that's a shift. He's playing with different guys for the majority of the game, and he's not getting that full first quarter to get into a rhythm, and he made the transition completely smoothly. That's been really impressive to me.
Barry, what surprised you?
This year, not much of anything, really. My big surprise was last year, watching Paul George for the first time on a regular basis and just realizing how good he is. Remember the narrative when they Thunder traded for him? Everybody said, oh, he's a great player. But there was this idea that he's probably in the third team of NBA, somewhere 11 to 15 in the best players. Somebody like Jimmy Butler was considered better than Paul George. Is anybody still saying that? This guy on a nightly basis plays basketball at the highest levels. And so I saw it last year. This year he's having a better year. He's shooting better. His defense is better, not because he's playing better, but because he's got Jeremy Grant out there with him instead of Carmelo Anthony. So there's a whole lot more holes plugged. But no, he's just an unbelievable basketball player, and he's thriving. I couldn't be happier for him. I hope whatever is out there that he can achieve, I hope he does, whether it's MVP, whether it's whatever. He deserves it because he's a capital player, and he goes about his business so professionally. As Maddie was talking about, he's to the point where just whatever you want me to do, I'm going to play with anybody, play whenever. He doesn't really get worked up about not having the ball, doesn't get worked up about when he's in the game, all those things. He said, just, take me out, put me in, whatever you want me to do, and he thrives.
All right, guys, let's look ahead just a little bit for what the Thunder has coming up here. Still on the East Coast, Miami on Friday, as I mentioned earlier, then Boston on Sunday, a matinee performance before the Super Bowl, guys, which I don't know. I think Boston's going to be hopping on Sunday afternoon. Got a few things going. Then they come back here, another game against Orlando. Memphis comes to town next week as well on Thursday. And then a Rockets game next weekend. We won't quite get that far, but it looks to me, Barry, like they've got a chance to put some hay in the barn with this upcoming schedule to win some ball games and get some W's out there.
Yeah, they've turned it around. They had that terrible slump, 1-5 against a 6-game stretch in which they really only played 2 good teams in that stretch, and but they've snapped out of it. And I don't know if they can beat the Celtics in Boston. I don't know what a city is like when it's got its team playing in the Super Bowl on that day. For all I know, the place is going to be hopping. For all I know, the place is going to be dead. Who knows? But if you can, if you can come back, you got a couple of easy games next week before you have the showdown at Houston a week from Saturday. So the Thunder's put themselves in really good position. And I tell you what they've done is they've made teams fear them. People say this is going to be a tough out in the playoffs because of the way they defend. Yeah. And they got a couple of guys. One is, an MVP player, and the other one is historic numbers. So they've put themselves back in the conversation for being the NBA's second best team. We all know who the first best team is, but really what you're shooting for is the second best team in the league. Thunder's back in that conversation.
Maddie, we mentioned the Boston game. You'll be there. You can tell us if it's hopping or dead.
It'll be interesting for sure.
But that's a game I think a lot of people are interested because the first time Boston comes here, it's very early in the year. Thunder blows a lead. They lose that game to the Celtics. Now it feels like the Thunder, while not a totally different team, definitely a different team. What do you want to see out of the Thunder on Sunday afternoon in Boston?
Afternoon games are always weird. Anything pretty much can happen in an afternoon game. Although, the last time the Thunder played an afternoon game, they played really well in New York. So for them, it's going to be, who knows what happens in Miami. We'll see. We'll see. They have to get over that hump first. But really, it's just got to be fall back on those defensive principles. Let that defense carry you. And if the three-pointers happen, they happen.
Yeah, and that's where Boston really got going last time when they played. It's going to be interesting to see if that defense, as it stepped up to the point where they can turn those runs that are likely to happen at some point, can they turn them off quick enough to counter it? We'll see. Again, a big matchup on Sunday. That's a 1 o'clock tip in Boston, and it is on ABC, so everybody will be watching before the Super Bowl comes up later in the day. So be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.